let us begin with the ceremony. The flame element, our wisdom and compassion. So good to see you all. It's so wonderful to be able to do this with you, and I'm so excited about continuing. We have this month and 1 week into December this first 7 gestures, 28 practices that we have learned. Amazing, right? And all differently applicable in our daily lives. Some more maybe suited to formal practice, some maybe more we connect with them as on the spot, but all of them can be done in either way. It's just wonderful. And just to share together and have the context and community to be able to like explore with, it's like I'm just having to say that I'm nerding out with the fun of being able to focus on a particular set of teachings for a week and then move on. It's like, it's like what I've wanted for my entire Dharma career, and I guess I just realized that, I just had to create it for us myself, because it's like, well, it's not quite, it isn't, there may be things like that, but I wasn't accessing them, so it's just fun to do. And of course we'll continue, which is wonderful, but for now we're honing in on the culmination of the first 7 gestures here, which is great. Moving into the 3rd sub-practice of the 7th gesture. How cool. Right in time for Thanksgiving in the United States. I know you already had that. So fair enough, but you're welcome. You're always welcome at my Thanksgiving, whether virtually or not. We'll have to connect and enjoy some food together. I'll be working that day probably, but a good work that I enjoy. So let's begin by regarding our portal of light and images as simply a reminder for the connection we feel to each other. And just take a moment and we could all feel our connection to Janet, including Janet. You can feel your connection to yourself. Yeah. Look at this beautiful being. Just feeling, you see how you feel when you feel Janet? And that's connection. Where is that happening? Goodness knows, but it's right here, isn't it? It's not far away. No. Beautiful. Thank you for being here, Janet. Let's move to Lori. Look at Lori. Lori, you can connect with yourself. and we'll all connect with you. Oh, beautiful. Feel how it feels to connect with Lori. Appreciating her. What a wonderful person. It's a privilege to journey with you. Thank you, Lori. We could come to Stephen. Stephen, let's feel Stephen. Stephen feels Stephen. We feel you. Feel that joyfulness. Wonderful. We appreciate you. And Lynn, I jumped ahead, but Lynn, I think you two are nearby. Lynn, we appreciate you. We feel you. And you can feel yourself in all your glory. being you. Thank you for being here. And you get to feel me, and I get to feel me. Just because I'm the talker, it doesn't mean I don't get to be put on the spot. I'm so happy to be with you. Wow. Uh, Unfortunately, they can't put this in the app directly, but if Zoom only knew, this is the key. Anyway, how fun. I just want to acknowledge our cohort and that some of our younger members have uh, drifted off from attending live events, and that's okay. I told everyone at the beginning, you don't have to come to everything. You just have to come to what you want to and what you can fit in your life. This is the living sadhana. I've stayed in touch with everyone who's been in our cohort, who's been there and tried to, and we're all busy people, but I've stayed in touch and they're all very good. But I miss them. And if you're watching this recording, no shame here. I'm just saying you're busy. I love you. I give you a big hug. But I am acknowledging your absence because I miss you. And we if you are watching, we acknowledge you watching later on when you fit in your life. You're beautiful, beautiful people that I adore. And you know, I don't want to say too much about it, but to say a little. You know, in India, it was traditional that towards the end of one's life, at the end of one's career, in the later years, you know, when you're still maybe working, but you're at the farther end, that's when you'd really devote more time to practice. And isn't that interesting? That was the pattern in India. It's still actually quite, it's thought of that way. You know, you grow up, you get educated, you work, have a family or not, and then you really devote your life to practice. And, you know, according to Erickson's stages of life, the elder, the people in the second and later stages of the end of the cycle of life, they're devoted more to reflecting on their contribution to the world and their meaning and integrity as a person. And so it's just psychologically, developmentally, and life experience-wise, it's understandable that the group of us is older, including myself, than the younger people that were joining. That said, so wonderful to have young people in the Dharma practicing. I spent decades and a half almost working with young people a lot. I did a lot of work with youth groups in my community, and I love working with younger people. And I don't think I'm cool enough anymore for that. The Generation Z people, you know, forget it. TikTok, what the hell is that? I don't know. I'm out. I am not cool anymore officially. You know when you realize, oh, I'm no longer cool. Yeah. Well, I'm part of that club now, so I'm with anyone who feels that way. Some people, though, Ruthie, my teacher, yeah, she was the coolest kid in the block. You know, when she lived at Carmel, she was in her 70s, but everyone wanted to sit at her table. So it's not about age. She was timeless. She was a dragon lady. Everyone was like, oh, I want to sit at Ruthie's table. I'm not kidding. I also have to say this for the record. When she was in her 70s, she had a 35-year-old Swedish rock star boyfriend. I am not kidding. I'm not even kidding. He was, his band was on Warner Brothers for a little bit, and then they pulled off because they hated the big business, but they were really good. Binger the Voyager. Oh, probably shouldn't have said that, but anyway, I'm going to say it anyway. I won't tell you which one of them was with it, because that way, that's privacy is somewhat maintained. But he's a good friend of mine. We took the refuge vows together with Camp Rinpoche, and it was amazing. It was amazing because she was just so cool. That kind of, but anyway, Sorry. Side note. The point is, I'm not ageist at all here. I'm just saying that I've noticed the younger people, and I've talked to them, and they're so busy. They're so busy with so many things, and I think that's just a shift in society too for younger people. I refuse. I refuse. I left Eastern Massachusetts so far. I'm up in Maine now. Life is slower. Fits me well. I'm much happier so far. So we'll see. Yeah. But I just wanted to acknowledge all of us traveling this journey, and then not all of us, do everything, and it's a little sad too. It's okay to feel a little sad because oh, I want all, and there were a bunch of people that couldn't even make this, who wanted to be here, who I've either worked with one-on-one or who have had to defer to the next one or something. So I just want to acknowledge them too, because our Sangha is, maybe small but mighty, and they're wonderful people that have been involved, and I'm grateful to absolutely everyone who's come through this virtual shrine room and has shared a sense of connection, even if they're no longer involved. It's so touching to me. So I just wanted to say that, because you know what? We're getting to the end, so if I don't say it now, when am I going to say it? I gotta say thank you. All right. Does anyone want to share anything in terms of checking in before we get going? I've managed to say quite a bit, and I didn't realize. Oh, well, also I had some technical difficulties. You can hear me okay now, though, right? That's okay.
Nick, is this a lot different for you than, let's say, what you were how you were teaching and when you were teaching at Shambhala? How is this different?
That's a great question. I haven't actually. I haven't thought about that in a while. It's very different. It's in the okay. So I could give a. I'll give a kind of not aloof, but a cryptic answer, in that it's the same and it's totally different. It's the same in that, I'll make it more clear. It's the same in that I'm getting to share my love of Dharma with people and teaching the Dharma. And in that sense, it's the same. And whether I was teaching some of the early curriculum or I was a teacher at an advanced assembly, it was all the same to me. It doesn't matter. Any teaching is beautiful to me, because it's really, for me, it's so relational. It's about connecting with the people that I'm connecting with. And it's about the student. I've come to realize that my sense of myself is I'm a servant of those devoted to the Dharma. I'm a humble servant to them. I'm not, I don't know what else to say. It's like, I feel it's my deepest wish and honor to serve people's interest in the Dharma as best I can, and wherever they go and whatever they need to study and whoever they want to study with, go for it, do it. But I'm just trying to do my part. So that's cool. That's still true. What's totally different is that in some ways in the Shambhala community, I was empowered, well, in many ways, I was empowered by the lead teachers and the head of the lineage to do what I saw fit, because they trusted me, which is really, 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 really good, really special. That was really good for me. It was really helpful because it helped me just go the way I wanted. Yet I still didn't feel like I could fully manifest and share the teachings to the degree that I do now, because now it's like, well, I'm just doing it the way that I know how to do it. And in some ways, it's made me reflect and go back and go, man, all my colleagues, all my fellow teachers, I wish that had been their mandate all along in Shambhala, that the head of the lineage had said, you know what, I trust each of you, I've empowered you as lineage holders and teachers, and I want you all to teach people and guide them the way you see fit. That to me would have been a fully adult, trusting two-way relationship that was real empowerment in the lineage. And I felt like I got that a little bit because I was allowed to innovate and do things. No, almost no one else was. Myself, very rare position. I was allowed to innovate. That wasn't allowed by a lot of teachers. They weren't allowed to do that. I'm so grateful that I was allowed to do that by my teacher. But that said, there were limits, and now I feel like, it's sort of like, okay, here we are. How do I see things? And you know why that's important? Not because of me, but because I'm the transducer, and I'm working with who I am as a model for my conducting of the path. And so it's really just efficient to let me teach in the way that I understand and synthesize the things that I think are important. If I'm always referencing back, what would my teacher think? That's a good thing for the beginning years. But as you get a little more mature, that starts to become a lid as opposed to an umbrella. I think you have to get more and more empowered, unless the teacher's afraid of that, or then that's just not a healthy situation. Fortunately, I wasn't in that position. I was empowered to do things, but now I'm delighted to be able to share in the way that I see fit. So I think that's been so fun, and yeah, thank you, Stephen, for asking. That's a fascinating question. Also, I'd like to say I got to pilot these teachings for 6 months, going through everything before this for a period of, 6 months, but it was, boy, that was too fast. I'm glad I didn't expose more people to that, because it was like we went through all 84 practices in 6 months. No, it was just, and yes, people benefited. Their testimonials were life-changing. They were mind-blowing. And I'm so grateful for that. And it was encouraging. Yet I now know, hey, slow down, kiddo, as my dad might say. You gotta pace things out. You might be excited, but you can't hurry. We can meet the challenge of the preciousness of our time together. And I want to do that. I am committed to that. At the same time, it's a balance, right? If you go too fast, certain things don't penetrate properly, and I'm just so grateful. That's why I'm so grateful for all of you, because honestly, we are a circle that completes each other. Because if I can't take my time, if people don't have the interest or attention span, or they're too busy for it, the teachings don't live on that way. So it's really beautiful to be able to do this at the right pace. Even this is a bit fast, to be honest, all the amount of content. That said, hey, we're trying. We can always learn from it over time. I did want to share this image. Can you see that? Yeah, it's a Kali Chakra mandala. Isn't it beautiful? Yeah. Why I'm showing this is because a mandala shows this kind of, the outer ring is like, there's flames, rainbow flames, kind of protection. Then there's the mantras. And then on the inner part of it, it's actually like a castle compound, right? And on the outer part, there are protectors. The inner part, there are like deities that have different functions. And then in the very middle, there are two deities in union, in sexual union, in love, making love. They symbolize our nature. The outer deities symbolize our qualities, our parts, and protectors. And then, the ring around it is our environment, and the mantras are sort of our activities in the day in our world. It's a beautiful thing, right? So this is important, because when I talk about the living sadhana is the mandala of life, right? So when we learn these gestures, we're really learning how to navigate the ecosystem of our existence, potentially, or at least we're getting some instructions on ways to, on the spot, practice, as well as formal practices, both, right? But we're getting that mix, and that's a complete approach as far as I'm concerned. In fact, I can't imagine going back, Stephen, to your question, I can't imagine going back to teaching just formal practices at this point. I mean, once you've taught thousands of people to meditate over decades and you see what works and what doesn't, you kind of end up with some strong opinions. It may still be anecdotal, but it's pretty strong anecdotal, and I feel like I know what I can offer to what people need, and I really feel this approach, in some ways, this is my homage to, Trungpa Rinpoche and the second one, that whole lineage. Like, this is my offering back to my teachers. It's like, hey, this is what I see as needed. This is my devotion. This is what I see actually might be helpful, and not for everyone, right? Not for everyone, but for some people, and that's important. I'm so happy that there's many, 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 many different ways, and I think that should always be true, that there's not just one way. It's not a factory. Okay, this is officially the longest preamble ever. So now let's get to work here. Thank you all so much, and remembering our connection to each other and feeling each other. I can't tell you how much that means to me to feel you all and feel like we're in the imaginal / real space together. Remember, your unreal imagination is existing, it's appearing, it's as real as any other appearance. That's a wonderful, eye-opening phrase, right? So that's what we're doing. We're trusting that feeling itself is essential to human meaning. So where have we been? We've been through a whole journey. We've looked at the essence of life, just being, natural aliveness as itself, nothing to accomplish, nothing left undone. An approach to meditation in which awareness is given primacy, and we just rest in our curiosity about aliveness, coming back from distractions to our basic being and goodness and aliveness. Of course, what happens when you're alive is you notice what? The song of change, continuously played by all phenomena. What am I missing some lines? Janet, what are the other lines? Song of change continually teaches us, played by all phenomena. Right, is that it? Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So we just notice this quality of, wow.
Again and again. Yeah,
Okay.
again and again, the song of change teaches us, continuously played by all phenomena.
Thank you, dear. And that line is important, right? Because it's not just once. It's like again and again in each moment, the song of change is playing. If you think it's not true, by the way, just wait. It'll find us. And then we move into, what is the verse here, my dear Janet?
Regardless of past commitment, vow only arises as our actual condition. Congruency is the only way forward.
And we dive in. What are we diving into? acceptance of change, acceptance of what we're feeling, acceptance of reality, acceptance of being alive in change. You could just do an equation. Aliveness plus change equals going with that. It's the third gesture, like not fighting change and aliveness, like finding where we are today. Instead of reading a verse and just saying, yeah, I believe in the thing and the thing and the thing. Here we say, I'm connecting with how I actually am, and this is the core of my practice right now. Boy, that's, I'll just say it. It's cocky. It's probably wrong, but maybe the third gesture can counteract some of the entropy of religion. If everyone can actually feel their own lives, feel what they're feeling in this moment, make an aspiration based on their actual feelings of their own sense of their spiritual path, not dogma, not religion, and then dive into it, maybe entropy isn't so strong in religion. Maybe it could actually be a living lineage. Well, at least somewhat. You never know. But that's my aspiration, okay? That we each are not getting lost in speculation. This is personal. It's not something I read on a page. That means a lot to me. And then from that, we come into placing that mind in the cradle of loving kindness. Sweet Janet, what is the verse for this?
Embracing one's whole self, intimacy melting the obscuring ice of self-hatred.
Saying I love you and feeling it. I love you. I love you. I love me. I do love me. I'm going to love myself. I'm really wanting to love, and I'm loving myself. I heard from a therapist that had done a lot of couples work, said all problems in relationships come from a lack of self-love. It's a fascinating, It's a really? That might be true, actually. And then we move to embracing the heart. Just like me, all who I see long for freedom. The interesting thing about loving oneself is that then we're kind of like able to look from love in ourselves and respect for ourselves at another person. And we can go, wow, what is it like to be them? But it's not coming from a place of, what is it like to be them and how do I control them?
It's that resonance in the resonant heart.
Yeah. Yeah, right? Like that feeling of like, oh, we're both human and I can feel your humanness and your feelings are yours. And when I feel yours, I feel them in me, but I respect them and I feel mine and we're both, we're resonating. We feel seen, empathized with. That's beautiful. Validated. The irony of validation is it allows us to get over our own focus on not being validated. Once you're validated, like, okay, now I can think about you. It's a funny thing. Until we're validated, though, like, I don't know. But once we feel validated, we're like, okay, what's your thing? Because I feel good now. It's almost like there's 2 ice cream cones. And it's like, you got to get yours, and then you can give the other one away. But if you get both of them, you're like, I didn't get any ice cream. So you keep one and get one. I'm sure, I know parents learn these complex politics with two kids. Like, you both have to have, there's got to be 2 ice creams. Give me some scissors, I'll cut that thing in half. There's only one. So we have to feel ourselves. And then we move into within totality, within dimensional embodiment.
Shining in
Everybody?
totality, within dimensional embodiment, shining in totality. Relative space reveals the expanse of space within, and thoughts are put in their own place.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you. And here we move into ultimate love, the sense of space inside of us and around us. Here we enter the space of accommodation. The space of accommodation is so gentle. What could touch more softly than space?
Mm.
What could embrace you more fully than space? If space were a feeling, what would be more pervasive than space?
Nick,
Mm.
you know, it's starting to feel like to me is like you seem to like represent what my parents maybe could have or should have been in a sense, because um like you're bringing you're like realizing the full potential of like me as a kid. If I had had that type of, you know, true pure vision or pure heart when I was growing up, that they could support that, I just think, wow. But you know, when you were describing the practice of being in the womb of Tara, or the womb of the Buddha,
Yes.
and then we're nurtured, I've always kind of wondered what does that relate to, like, do we suppose from that we're being born into something new? Or I know that sounds kind of more Western type of religion or something, but
No, that's not at all. I mean, think of our chant in the morning. Today I am born into the family of the Buddhas. I am a child of the Buddhas. So the womb of Tara is the womb of the Buddhas, and it's the mother of all Buddhas. And so when we have the third sub-practice of the fourth gesture, we have the immersive quality of being in that luminous space, almost pre-birth or post-death, you know, this brilliant light of awareness and love, the ultimate bodhicitta. But it's also pervaded with a subjective experience, which is the relative bodhicitta. When your relative experience and your ultimate nature are combined, spacious and luminous, you're in both. Now, when you think of being a child of the Buddhas, why does that happen? Because you rouse the awakened mind. Now, we were talking about this morning. All beings have Buddha nature. but not all beings have bodhicitta arisen in them. So Shantideva says, like a blind person finding a jewel in a heap of dust, thus somehow, magically, improbably, bodhicitta has arisen in my mind stream. So Shantideva there is saying, in our Bodhisattva vow in the mornings, he's saying, look, yeah, you may all have Buddha nature, but not ever. But it's the odds of us discovering that altruistic heart. It's likened to a person who's unsighted, and actually, a heap of dust. That's Sanskrit translation. They probably should have called it a heap of garbage, because the real translation is garbage. So it's not. I mean, dust is the word, but they were trying to make it sound a little more poetic. No, it's garbage. It's like going through a pile of compost and garbage that smells awful. Somehow you found a diamond. It's like if a diamond, like why? First off, if you can't see, how would you find it? Secondly, why would you be rooting through garbage? And then finally, why would someone throw a diamond in the garbage? Right? It's so improbable. That's the whole point of that stanza. That it's just unlikely. But the point is to increase our devotion. I could argue that the logic is you go in the garbage because that's what conflicting. That's what our mess of emotions is. Yeah.
So I chose one of my therapists who actually lives in Eastern Massachusetts because I was on the fence about choosing her or not. And at the end of a workshop, somebody dropped a gold filling or something, I can't remember, into the garbage from the food we'd been eating. And she went through it and found it. So talk about devotion. It was like, I want to work with her.
Wow. That's the right stuff. That's braver than an astronaut. It's beautiful. Thank you, Lynn. That's such a beautiful story. No, and you're very wise. They say in India, I remember I once did a talk. I think it's still on it's on the website for you all as members. It was the talk I did at Susan Piver's on how to find a teacher. It's an audio, yeah. And I talked about a lot of stuff, but one of them was the 10 aspects of some sutra that, in India that told you how to look. Well, one of them is like, observe your teacher for 10 years. See if they have bodhicitta. And that was the key thing. Like, make sure they're really like, and of course, Westerners are like, 10 years? Ain't nobody got time for that. I mean, so, okay, that's not really culturally there, but the idea was you're supposed to see if they have bodhicitta, if they've awakened the heart of altruism. Really, if they've done that to any degree, it's all good. You'll be fine. If they haven't done that, they might be brilliant, they might be talented, they might be wise, but they're not going to really be wise, not real wisdom, just knowledge, right? And they won't really be able to help you in the deeper way. Oh, and Stephen, just back to your thought, like, oh my gosh, don't get me started. If everyone was raised, with love, total love and compassion, I mean, what a world we would live in, right? I don't think we would know hunger. We wouldn't know cruelty in the way we do. We wouldn't have the kind of wars and inequity we have. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I really don't think I am. If everyone was raised with complete love.
That's really profound, Nick, that you are kind of acting like this surrogate parent, and much more than that. But I'm saying for those of us that were raised with really troubled childhoods, or I'm just imagining this because I feel like I had a really decent childhood, but I'm just thinking how profound it is that to find a teacher that I feel like has such a pure heart to kind of heal, to make up for that childhood that maybe was missed.
Yeah, you know, Stephen, we're all reparenting ourselves all the time. Some of the work we're doing with the parts is to say, I'm the adult me is now the parent of these little parts of me that are in me, these developmental stages. And I feel that in myself. You know, as I mature and grow as a person on my path, I'm like, I'm able to tell the difference between when I'm in a younger part of myself where I'm kind of blended with some need that is unrealistic for the situation. I even had that experience this morning, honestly. I was like wanting, you know, someone to make me feel safe, and I caught myself and said, no, I can do that for myself.
Mm.
I don't need that from you, actually. And it was it was like a very like, oh, what a relief, you know? But it's interesting because, you know, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, in terms of the Buddhist teacher or the spiritual teacher, and I won't talk about other religions because I don't know about them, but I imagine you could extrapolate. In a healthy dynamic, it would function the same way. In an unhealthy dynamic, what an incredible abuse of power. So it's a dangerous thing. But His Holiness said when he was introduced by one of the founders of attachment theory to the theory of bonding, you know, the styles of bonding, he said, "Oh, this makes a lot of sense. I'm a bonding figure for many of my students in Tibet, you know." And he right away, he's just like, "Great, I get it." And he knew his role. He knew his role was to be virtuous and mature and to think of their benefit. And I think what's heartbreaking is when we see teachers who have incredible wisdom and incredible gifts and creativity, and yet they kind of get lost and isolated, and they end up looking for their emotional, sexual needs and all sorts of things from their students, and then it gets really wonky, and their students get confused, and everyone gets upset. You know, of course, that happened in Shambhala, and so you know, there's a lot of pain around when an attachment figure lets us down. Now, my job is to be as best I can be, as virtuous and helpful as I can be. But it is amazing to think, you know, and it's sort of that whatever, not, you know, as long as we have the resources to care for ourselves, whatever doesn't kill us does make us stronger. And so when you work with a teacher or a person or someone in a bonding or even a parent, and, you know, you've been disappointed, I don't know, it's a tricky thing, right? It's like, of course we would want the ideal situation, but without difficulties, how do we learn to deepen our compassion? I sometimes look back at my life and it's a bit of a paradox, right? Some of the worst things that happened to me were also some of the best teachers. I wouldn't wish that on any of you or myself or anyone. But I am a little bit like, you know, I don't have a goatee, but if I had one, I'd be like, You know, I'd be like, because it's a paradox, right? Sure, it's great. I agree, though, Stephen. If everyone had just totally loving, I really do think the world would be a much, much happier place. That said, a certain level of difficulty that we encounter also helps us deepen our compassion. So I don't mean it as like anything more than that. It's just interesting, isn't it? It's interesting how we. And that's where we are in these teachings. We moved into formally the full practice of compassion. The seventh gesture, exchanging self for others. Yeah. What's the verse, dear Jenny?
From within the expanse, exchanging self for other, emotional energy reaches its apex without eclipsing into story.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much. So we're sending love and taking in suffering into the heart, and the heart turns it into love and sends it back out. The magical heart. The hands help us connect and stay focused. Beautiful. So that's the simple version of this. The on the spot is just Tong Len on the spot. That's the practice. You know, you see someone suffering in the grocery store, you take in the suffering, you send out love. So simple, right? And one of the coolest practices. How is this different from the empathy practice, sip gesture? Because they're kind of similar, right? It's a good question. I'm glad I asked myself. No, it's that even let's say the fourth gesture, you know, we're caring for ourselves, and then we do the firefly, we fill ourselves up with love, and then we go into the womb of the Buddhas, you know, the full light of, you know, that you were talking about, Stephen, nurturing, reparenting, and then we go drop into the heart of Tara as sad joy. Now, what I didn't say, probably well, but I'm still learning as I do this with all of you, you know, but that I wanted to really correlate the fourth sub-practice of the fourth gesture, and I can see Janet's incredible prajna churning, like, I'll have to ask Nick about this later. I'm like, yes, without you, I would be lost. You're right. You do have to ask me about it. But this is something we need to document, which is that the personal sadness and the collective sadness are one. That's really what that fourth sub-practice is about. That when we feel sadness, it's not, sometimes we identify that as others, but can you identify it as your sadness is all people's sadness? See how precise that is? It's not your sadness and other people's sadness is the same. So stop focusing on you brat. That is not what I'm saying. I'm saying your experience of personal sadness is a key in, a gateway in, a touch point into the universal sadness. And they're not really different in the end. The reason I did this is I found it a little bit confusing when Trungpa Rinpoche would carefully distinguish sad joy or your own sadness is not self-pity. And it's not like you've been mistreated. And I was like, I kind of want to be like, excuse me, Grandpa Trungpa, I disagree, sir. I disagree. I believe the personal sadness of a person is a key into the universal, sir. I've experienced that. Please open that gateway. Don't shut that down. Don't shame self-pity or personal mistreatedness, because mistreatedness is actually just a hair off from feeling, oh my gosh, this is the mistreatedness. Do you see that? And I bet you $1 million he would go, very good. That's also true. And I'd be like, all excited. But yeah, I mean, I think I worked on it for a couple decades. I feel good about it. I could be wrong, but I know it's a key in, right? And so it's the personal key in. But then we move into the altruism, in the fifth gesture. Now, how is this different? Because it's empathy. Empathy is still, I want to feel you. I aspire to open my heart to you. I'm considering what it's like to be you. It's all of this like practice of empathy, and it's passive and active, but it's active on an inner level. It may come out as behavior. It may, and it often does, but it's the focus of that practice is very much personal and inner. Like, how do I develop empathy in my own continuity and mind stream? This correlates to the traditional Buddhist teaching of aspiring bodhicitta, which is that we rouse aspiration and say, may I help people? May all beings be happy, the four immeasurables, etc. Tonglen marks a distinction and moves into what's called entering bodhicitta, where the aspiration now comes into our behavior and is an actual action. Now, Tonglen is still ephemeral, immaterial, it's energetic, but it's very relational, right? So it's moving us towards that actual interaction where you see someone suffering and you try to do something. I mean, the most kind of basic version of this is you're at the stoplight on a highway, and there's the person who's homeless, and they're walking up the cars, and they say, and they got their sign, however unwitty or witty it may be, you look at their face, hopefully, and you don't have their sign, and you say, you see their body, you see their whole person. I mean, that's my practice. And sometimes I look at their signs, don't get me wrong. Some of them are funny, some of them are sad, some of them are, you know, they spell like I would spell, which means they didn't have a phone to check it. I can't spell. So anyway, but so I see them coming in, and you may, and there's some schools have thought, you know, don't give them $1 because they're just going to use it on their addiction or something. And then there's some schools that thought that say, just give them $1. Just give them $1. Because it's good for you, and you know what? They're going to do it anyway. Just help them do what they need to do, and they might use it for something good. I tend to try and give them $1. But, you know, the way I look at it is I want to make a connection. The dollar is irrelevant. I want to move my hand towards them. I want to look them in the eye. That's the hardest thing for people. You know, parting with $1 is irrelevant. Looking someone in the eye, that costs a lot. Because you have to see yourself sitting in a car. Or you don't. Or you can just go, no, I'm looking the other way. You can roll up the, turn the radio up, whatever. And there's nothing, I shame no one. I blame no one. It's just life. But the worst thing you can do to someone is just not acknowledge they exist. You know what? Rolling down the window and saying, hey, I hope you're hanging in there. Even that is worth more than $1.
Can I share a really beautiful story? We're having trouble getting to the third sub-practice tonight,
no.
but just in this context, and it's making me cry just recalling it. Someone who's very dear to me, a leader in the Dorje Kasem community, Dappen Will Riken.
He's a beautiful man.
He did a talk called Chaos in Everyday Life once, and that question came up. What do you do when you see someone begging for money like that, not knowing what they're going to do with it? And his response, and it's so in keeping with the seventh gesture for me, and it just hit me that his response was, what they do with the money is none of your goddamn business. Your job is to protect their heart. So that's making the eye contact. It's making the skin contact. It's letting them know that they're a human being.
It's beautiful, Janet. That's so fucking beautiful. Thank you so much. Your job is to protect their heart. Thank you, Will Riken. You're a beautiful man. Beautiful Bodhisattva. I used to lead social meditation groups all over, you know, visit them all over North America, Canada, and Europe. And in the practice, you know, we open up or open our hearts, and And I would often ask a question, we'd be sitting in meditation together in silence, and there was no topic, no agenda, just being there with each other, sharing, seeing if we can drop into our hearts. We didn't have this, I didn't give them this particular gesture, but socially it happened a lot where people would drop into their heart, say something from their heart, and then everyone would drop without having to move their hands even. It's very powerful. The hands, it's good to move the hands, it's a good practice we're doing, but it's just drawn from that kind of experience that it happens naturally. But sometimes, I would always ask, is this okay? Meaning, is it okay to be together in an unstructured space, just sitting together? Is it okay to not know what's going to happen next? Is it okay to be scared or to be nervous or to share something vulnerable? Is this okay? I asked this questions in hundreds of places in different cultures, and I asked it genuinely with no guarantee of people saying yes. It was so alive to be a part of a group where I would allow people to project on me that I was somehow in control of the process, and then I would reveal to them that I wasn't. I thought that was a very funny joke. Of course, the joke was also on me. The joke was on all of us. But that's how reality is. No one's really in control. Even when people are on the, behind a friggin' podium, with bulletproof glass, they're not in control. And sometimes people would say the most brilliantly beautiful, heartfelt things. And yes, most people would drop. But sometimes it would happen that a group would just fall silent and look down. And I would watch this, right? Because I was the facilitator. I would look to see what's happening in the group. When people look down, they tend to go inward, physiologically, and they're kind of like afraid of making social connection because it's too intense. And I would see people look down, and I would watch the whole group because I was, I trained in facilitating a group process like that. And I remember once, an emblematic moment where a woman who I appreciate a lot, she was a very brave woman, and she had shared something very vulnerable. But then she looked around the group And she herself had been facilitating all sorts of big conferences or things on race, and things like that. And she just looked at her and she said, "Really? Like, you're all gonna leave me hanging here?" So that also happens. And in that moment, I was powerless to do anything, because it doesn't matter if I say something, as a facilitator, "Oh yeah, and here comes, Robin Hood," or something. No, it's not like that. It has to be the group. It has to be us. It's not enough to have some person do. No, they're not doing your laundry. We have to do this as a group. And it was heartbreaking. And it's not like it was always like that. There were times where people met that so fully. It was ecstatic. People would hear someone drop and they would meet it, and I raise you 20. And the whole group would just escalate into almost, really kind of an ecstatic state of love and heartbroken openness. So I think that was actually ultimately slightly more common. But I'm so touched by those moments where someone like Shreya could name something I'd seen so many times, and she named it for me with her courage. She just said, "Hey, are you going to leave me hanging?" And it became emblematic to me of, like, I would even tease, I've taught about it many times since then, about, like, don't leave people hanging. Please don't do that. Be the first one in to say, "I hear you." That must have been intense. Be the first person to make a move. It's not enough to sit there and go, "God, that's intense." So this is why we have entering compassion. It's not enough to just aspire. We have to actually say, "I hear you." We have to act on that. Well, we don't have to, but I wish for us to be able to, all of us, because it's so much more fulfilling. Well, we've primed the situation. The transmission's really quite simple, so we'll do that, and then we'll have a little time to discuss. The practice we're doing builds on what we've done before. So let's start with the gesture of the seven gestures Janet was doing, sending out love, wishing to take in suffering. It reaches the heart, which is transforming that suffering into love. Now here, we just combine the previous two sub-practices. We have a sense of a gentle moonlight in the head. And we have a sense of a feeling of laksam, I want to help, and feeling that shining or warming or radiating, or however you experience it with whatever sense from your heart. So you have your heart radiating love and your head radiating this coolness, this soothingness. And we hold both these little spheres in the central channel in the back of our head and the back of our chest as we do this practice. And we just notice the situation. We bring situations to mind. I'm thinking of my mother. She's in the hospital. She's okay, but it's been a hard couple of days for her. So I send her love and a soothing, cooling quality because she's been upset. And I bring in her confusion into my heart. And I send her warm, radiant love from my heart. And then, maybe you think of someone who's angry and upset, and you bring in their anger and you send them moonlight, coolingness radiating from your head. Or maybe you think of someone who's cold and lonely and doesn't feel loved, and you send them feeling of, I wish you could feel you're loved. I wish you could feel your goodness. How does that feeling, that phrase, and its warmth underneath it radiate to them? Then we try to actually imagine pulling in their sadness and suffering into what? This brilliant warmth of love that can turn everything is turned into love in its heart. So as you can see, now we've brought together a full arsenal of cooling and warming, wrathful and peaceful. Wrathful here just means soothing, dispassionate gentleness that's cooling. Peaceful means tender, warm, sad, delicious love. They're both aspects of our being. And here we can really amp it up. We can have a peak experience of compassion where we bring in a lot of emotion, a lot of intensity, and send out a lot of love. That's called, the kind of, with the apex of emotion without eclipsing into story. But it's also true that we can just bring in a subtle feeling of, oh, someone's a little lonely and discontented. And we can just send out a very tender, like, I wish for them to feel loved. And we feel that. What I'm trying to say here is that we have a range of emotion that we can draw on depending on the situation. If there's an event in the world that draws out an enormous reaction from us, then that's appropriate. If there's a situation in our life where it's just a subtle feeling of, oh, then that's appropriate. What I'm trying to establish here is that whether it's this moonlight or the sunlight of the heart, moonlight of the head, it's just about what's appropriate. Don't evaluate your compassion compared to somebody else or some ideal you have or some experience you had in the past. Here, we're simply only working with what is actually happening in our experience right now. So bring up things that are really happening in your life right now. And experiment giving both moonlight and sunlight, coolness and warmth, gentleness and love. See which one a situation needs and then move to another situation. Can you go back and forth between the two different qualities and feel them? Can you do them at the same time? Can you do them independently? Totally up to you to play. Try to feel what the particular situation that has arisen in your mind needs. Moonlight is like the starlight. So if you like starlight, it's very similar. It's very gentle, twinkly, glistening, as Lori said. And it might be good when a situation is really intense for you to try that. And then when there's a situation where you feel like, oh my gosh, there's so much tenderness, you could try the sun of the heart, the feeling of warmth. Just notice what a situation is. Remember the sixth gesture, the spaciousness of the height, width, and depth, the space around you, the space that we share right now, connecting with each other. The space of feeling is entangled with all of space. This gesture also is a way of connecting with the quality of all space is connected in the nature of feeling with each other. Once we think of each other, we're connected, no matter how far away, instantaneously. Whoever we bring to mind, we can feel like we're actually in the space of reality. It's important. If we don't have that ultimate bodhicitta feeling, it's hard to connect with them actually. If we really have faith in the connectivity, the entanglement of all space in our spaciousness, then we really have access to the other person's energy and subtle body in some way. Don't worry about that. Don't get too technical like I'm talking, but just so that you know, that's in there, right? Wanting to take other suffering on is so beautiful. Giving out our best, our light, our moonlight, our sunlight. Those are just examples of our beautiful qualities. Okay, Emo. Great. We all did it. That's it. So, in summary, the third sub-practice is bringing the moon and the sun together and practicing Tonglen and really just feeling which is needed, mixing them together, having them a little more emphasized, and really letting ourselves trust that whatever level of emotion we have, large or small, is perfect. The last point is that we're entangled, that all space is connected. If we feel spaciousness of the sixth gesture and add in our heart, we actually can connect with others. It's blown my mind how many times in my life when I thought of someone and reached out and they said, you know, I was thinking of you. And it's like, wow, we really are connected. Someday, Western science will prove their thing of it, but it's already true. So sorry we had such a long preamble. We don't have a ton of time for discussion, but if anyone has any questions about the practice or any comments, this is the time. Thank you so much.
The more that we feel this, is that the more that we are feeling the subtle body?
That's beautiful, Stephen. That's beautiful. Exactly. The sixth gesture connects us with the subtle body. There are teachings that say the subtle body realized in its true nature is all the whole universe. And this is that weird notion of entanglement, that each point is all points, and superlocation in quantum mechanics. The idea that everything, until it's collapsed to a particular thought or perception or experiment, particles and waves are in all points at all times. That's mind-blowing, but that's actually what they say. And that's actually what the Dharma says. So our subtle body is our access point to everything. And everything is in the subtle body. This is also called interpenetration. And the Buddha talked about this in the Flower Ornament Sutra, the Avatammasaka Sutra. So that's a beautiful teaching, that everything is in everything else. Every point contains all other points. All points are in every other point. And the beautiful analogy of this is Indra's web, that each crystal, each jewel in a web reflects all the other jewels. And that's interdependence. Very profound, very, very profound. Some think that the Flower Ornament Sutra is the most profound teachings of the Buddha, but really hard to understand. But unless you have a heart experience of it and a subtle body experience of it, like you said, Stephen. So this is a very tangible way of getting in touch with our oneness and connectedness with all beings. I find when I do Tonglen, and I'm expressing love and feeling, it's almost like the subtle body becomes more apparent, right? Because you're filling it up. It's almost like it's bringing in and sending out. How could that not happen with the subtle body? It can't just happen up here, right? Because we're so connected with the energetics. So I love that. And I think you're right on,
Nick, I just really want to thank you for the piece again about, say, having the gateway of self-pity as a gateway into compassion. I know for myself, when I have any sense of pitying myself, it's a reminder that I haven't been compassionate to myself. And yet I do forget. And it was nice doing the group practice in the sense that, sometimes I find that I begin to shut down with the amount of suffering just with the people in my circle, my dear ones.
Mm.
And so it is important for me that I have compassion for myself, because then that helps me to intersperse, that sense that my compassion for myself is that gateway to my compassion for others, because otherwise I do get overwhelmed and shut down. So just thank you for saying that. And, in terms of, really, are we going to leave someone vulnerable hanging? And that includes ourselves, right?
Oh.
So just having compassion for whatever all of us are going through, as well as our peeps and all the suffering that's going on in the world. And it's a time of immense suffering in the world, immense opportunity, immense transformation.
Oh, Lynn.
Including young people, I think of, sometimes I'm sad that there aren't more young people and people with families, and oh my gosh, I don't know that I'd ever have time to do stuff like this. When I was younger, I had the aspiration, and but after the laundry, that type of thing. So I'm grateful that I desire more space and time to do this kind of thing. And it's a lot sometimes too, as well. But, I'm grateful that you're leading us along with your faithful sidekick who keeps us straight and honest, Janet. Thank you. and this active part, the visible part of the Sangha. Yeah.
Oh, Lynn, thank you. You said it so beautifully. When the self-pity is really a sign of a lack of self-compassion, that's that's a checkmate move right there. That's it, right? Because there's no denying that. And then it comes back alive and like, yeah. Lori, what were you going to share?
I was just going to say that practice was so essential for me in trying to deal with some very frustrating situations with a friend where I just want to say, you're being so stupid. Doing that practice just really helped me get in touch with the compassion I need to address it with. So thank you.
Oh, Lori, you're welcome. And, Dharma practice like we're doing together, it's not easy. And, the traditional teaching said, you have to undergo hardships to practice the Dharma. And some of those hardships in Tibet were traveling great distances and without modern transportation to receive teachings, or the austerity of going into a place where you could be undistracted and have time to practice. So the generations that have come before us, silently or loudly, depending on our awareness of them, but the thousands of years of people who have passed this on, and that we are part of that and continuing that on. And it is a noble pursuit, and I say, from a place of my own life dedicated to that. And I'm so glad we can practice together that way. It's really, thank you all for into this. And Janet, did you want to?
It just that, as much as, some of us might have not had the experience of what's it like to nurture ourselves, and what's it like to show ourselves compassion, and kind of needing to have that modeled. And you and we just do such a beautiful job of that for each other. I think part of the reparenting for me has been in terms of the Dharma, what's really important at the end of the day in its practice. It's always practice.
So beautiful. And when we think of what practice is, it's a moment of meaning. Don't be fooled. Practice is not the formal time, because people can practice formally and be completely spaced out. People can practice formally and do great and never put it on the spot. So really what we need is both. And more important than both in abstract is the ability to know what's meaningful, and that what we love in our families, what we love in the people we love, is moments of meaning. Moments of true love are always meaningful, right? And so our practice is, as you said, Jen, is this if we can develop that view that our devotion to our practice isn't this extra hobby for us, it's literally our ability to abide in the true nature of meaning with everyone. And so when I look at it that way, and then it's like there's an unending stream of devotion for it that comes through me. Now, that said, I still have to freaking figure out how to live my life. There's lots of distractions. So we live in a crazy time. There's so many responsibilities and things. So I'm very realistic, and I'm so glad that we're all in this together at this time. It's not pie in the sky. We're like, how do we balance? But I'm just so grateful for all of you and what we're doing. So we'll go through this, as you know, for the next week in the morning recordings on how do you bring this into practice, and we'll unpack it much more. But why I spent so much time talking and we all shared from our heart is because these teachings are about the feeling, right? And once you get that feeling rolling, then the practice is easy. So I want to bring up something Stephen brought up last week, which is so important. How do you stoke the ember of your compassion? Bring something up. Remember a story, a moment of tenderness, a situation that always evokes your compassion, a beach dolphin, a kid being bullied. Do I need to say any more? You figure it out. You've got 100, right? So bring those up. And when you think, I wish that could never happen again. I wish that all kids being bullied would be protected. As soon as you think that thought, that's the supreme thought. And when you think that thought and you feel, how does it feel to think that thought? That's compassion right there, kiddo, as my dad would say. So on that note, let's dedicate the merit. All you sentient beings, I have a good or bad connection with. As soon as you have left this confused dimension, may you be born in the essence of bounty. And once you're born there, complete the boobies and the fire. See
Thank you,
ya.
everyone.
Hey, Nick,
Thank you.
can you really tell time on that watch?
Not really. 10 minutes late.
Because I see you always
Thank you.
looking at it. I'm just wondering.
I know. Well, I try. See you guys. Bye.